right, buckle up, everyone. It's time for the Public Square, and we didn't even start the recording yet, and things got going here today. So we're kind of jumping in the middle of a conversation here, Dave Zanotti.
Yeah, this is something between a Bible study and a food fight at this stage in the game. Yeah. And this time, Wayne, we actually clued you in on a couple of the pieces that were flying around staff before the microphones went on.
Yeah, you gave me 5 minutes warning this time, so thank you.
Well, we know you're a fast reader.
This is impromptu radio here,
right? You came up in the era of, what was it? The something Emily Swift, Amy something
Emily
reading
Post.
class.
What is it? I can't remember what it is.
The speed reading. Melanie will probably remember the speed reading. Just read the middle of the page, grab the words on both sides of the middle of the sentence.
Well, it got me through junior high, didn't it? So
yeah, I thought those were called Cliff Notes. But anyhow, so today we're going to actually move into a very sobering question, and we've got a working title here on the Public Square. And I don't know whether it'll make the final headline or not, and it'll be the reason that people will click on the phone app or on Spotify or YouTube or iHeart or wherever they find their podcasts, or be listening and turning the channel on the radio. Working title is, Why Do Presidents Get Shot?
Mm-hmm. Wow.
Now, we're talking, of course, we're going to launch the conversation from the White House Correspondents' dinner, which happened quite a while ago, if you're listening to this in the year 2027 or 2028. But it's not just a moment in time. It is a moment in time, but it's not just a moment in time.
Right.
It brings up the bigger question. And today we want to talk about the bigger question is, why does this happen? And so that's where we're going to start. And I thought what we would do is right from the beginning, we're going to play a piece of radio footage that came from your morning show with Michael Del Giorno. Recently, I had the opportunity on that program to interview Jon Decker, who is a member of the White House Press Corps. He's been there in that position for over 30 years. And he also does journalistic work for iHeart and Premiere. And because of that, he's a regular contributor to your morning show with Michael Del Giorno, as we are here from the Public Square. In this instance, I was filling in for Michael, and I had the privilege of interviewing Jon. And I interviewed him. I think we were his first interview of the week after he was in attendance at the White House Correspondents' dinner. And around the team at YMS that morning before we started the broadcast, we were asking, like, this question's unanswered, that question's unanswered. And all we could say was, we got to see where Decker was. What was his perspective? Well, he ends up being one of the best bird's eye view eyewitnesses of what actually happened. And we'll let Jon tell his own story.
It was my 30th White House Correspondents' dinner, and obviously a memorable one for reasons that we know about. Really a surreal experience being there at the dinner and seeing all the events of that evening unfold.
Jon, you are one of the most honest guys I know in the reporting business, and I've listened and watched a lot of them. And yes, a lot of us around the breakfast table at your morning show are now Decker stalkers. We look for your picture when there's moments on television with the more intimate White House press corps. There's Decker, there's Jon, there's our guy. So we're all appreciative of the access and the proximity and the objectivity you bring to all this. So let me ask you. Let me ask you a disqualifying question right from the start. All right,
okay.
Now, there's 2,500 people there. Not all of them were within proximity of the shooter. All right, and so it's like, it's one thing to be in the room. It's one thing to be close.
Right.
So what were your thoughts, your feelings? What did you experience? Put yourself in context for us on the evening.
Well, absolutely. My proximity was, I was one of the closest people to what happened. Let me just give you a description. It's a huge ballroom. I am at a table along the center aisle. You go up that center aisle straight to the head table, and I'm 2 tables from the rear of the ballroom. And it's at the rear of the ballroom and 2 double doors that you enter into the ballroom. And that is how close I was to the shooter or alleged shooter or would-be assassin. I heard 5 pops, and it was loud, David. It was clearly gunshots. Pop, 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 pop. And I knew right away it was gunshots. What I didn't know was whether the shots were coming from inside the ballroom. And I didn't know whether anybody within the ballroom, including the president, was hit by those shots that I heard. And there was, I wouldn't call it panic. In fact, there was an eerie silence. People immediately got under the table. So many did, all in that ballroom. The Secret Service swarmed in, some dressed as waiters. They swarmed in, and right by my table, I see the Secret Service flanking the Treasury Secretary, whisking him out of the ballroom. I see the Secret Service whisking out of the ballroom RFK Jr., also Steve Scalise, also a person who was the subject of a would-be assassin. He too was escorted right by my table outside the ballroom. So that's what I saw in the immediate aftermath of this shooting that took place. Most of the individuals that were attending that White House Correspondents' dinner were under the table. I was doing something probably pretty stupid. I had my cameraman right next to me at my table. He had his iPhone, and he may not be familiar with some of the people that were at various tables. And I was essentially directing him what to point his iPhone at, what to shoot for video.
Well, that settles that pool here at your morning show around the table, because the majority all said Decker wasn't under the table. Guaranteed, Decker did not duck under the table. That answers that question. Jon, it's clear then you had your mental process is you had a choice to make, to dive, to stand, to do. At what and you heard the shots were loud, and I'll tell you something. I don't know. I know you can get familiar with gunfire if you're a regular range practicer, if you're in the first responding business, if you're in the military, you get to it. But for most of us that are not shooting firearms every day, that eerie silence you depicted is real, because it is loud and it is arresting, and your brain has to process. How long did it take you to make the decision between fear and business? How fast did that happen for you?
Well, you don't process it; you just do it. Obviously, you're stunned, you're shocked that this could happen at a dinner in which there are layers of security. There's always been layers of security. But that being said, when that happens, my immediate concern is everybody in that room. My wife was at a different table. The president's at the head table. I have dozens upon dozens of friends and colleagues that are at tables throughout that ballroom. So, you're concerned about that, but also you are concerned about, as a journalist, wanting to show the world what is happening in real time. So, a really good friend of mine, he passed away, a really good friend of mine, worked at NBC News, just a little bit of a connection for you, David. Every time that you see video from 45 years ago of Ronald Reagan walking out of the Washington Hilton, you see that video? He shot that video. He was the pool cameraman that day for NBC News. His name is Shelley Finkel. He passed away, but, I always had respect for him to be in the moment and to capture that, and to be so steely in terms of his nerves and determination. And, to me, that always struck me as something that is indicative of a really high-quality journalist.
Jon, I'm sure everybody in the world is after you this morning for time. Can I ask you one more question?
Absolutely.
Did you did anyone in the room actually see the shooter taken down, or was he taken down before the doors?
I did. I'm glad you asked that question. So the double doors directly behind me were blocked by the Secret Service immediately after this happened. I left my table. I walked to the set of double doors right next to that set. They were not blocked by the Secret Service. And I went up the stairs, and there were two other people that were up the stairs, an AP White House photographer that I know very well, and someone from CQ. And we went up, and I could see visually the suspect that was taken down by the Secret Service, by law enforcement just moments ago. I could see visually with my eyes he was moving, so I knew he was alive. I didn't know whether he was shot or not shot. But I saw that, and then the Secret Service saw the three of us and essentially told us to get back into the ballroom. But I saw that in the immediate aftermath of the shooting that took place.
Do you think any Secret Service officers actually fired at the shooter, or do you think it was a physical takedown?
I think it was a physical takedown. It's apparent that this individual did not receive any bullet wounds. It was a person who was tackled by the Secret Service as he rushed past security.
So he never got through the main doors into the banquet hall. He was stopped before.
No, it was a floor above. You have to walk a set of stairs down, descend the stairs down to the ballroom. But he never got into the ballroom itself. That is correct.
Jon Decker, thank you. We would love to talk to you for another half hour, but out of respect for you being a pro's pro, the whole world's talking to you today. So thank you for taking a minute and getting to the breakfast table with us. Jon, always appreciate it.
Thanks, David.
Can't wait to talk to you tomorrow. Thank you.
Well, there you have it, an eyewitness account of what happened at the White House Correspondents' dinner. Dave Zanotti, you did the interview with our guest just a moment ago. What stuck out to you?
Compelling. All I can think of, Wayne, is what it would be like to hear 5 gunshots with the president sitting at the front of the room and your wife a few tables over, and you're at the door where the gun is exploding, where the bullets are flying. What do you do with that? A very compelling moment. I think it puts all of this into perspective.
Yeah. Well, the whole team's going to join us here on the Public Square today. That team consists of our own Dave Zanotti, and Jeff Sanders is here, Melanie Elsie, Rob Woolgate, and our producer, Alan C. Duncan. We've all been listening to what you just heard on the Public Square, and we'll come back and talk about why do presidents get shot? That's what's ahead today on the Public Square. And as always, we're grateful for your support. You'll find us online on any of the podcast platforms, including our own website, thepublicsquare.com. Stay with us. Back with you on the Public Square today. The whole team has been listening here, and we're going to react to what we've heard and talk more about presidential assassination attempts through the years. Why do presidents get shot? The team consists of Dave Zanotti, whom we've heard from already, Jeff Sanders, Melanie Elsie, Rob Woolgate, and our producer, Alan C. Duncan, and I'm Wayne Shepherd. Okay, Dave, you did the interview we heard. What stuck out to you?
Well, before we go right back to that, I want to pick up on something you said just as we were leaving the last segment. And I was talking with Sarah and Jonah of Kids on the Square, the producers and the writers and the directors, creators of that wonderful project that's going on. And they were commenting on how favorably people respond when they understand that what we're doing here is 100% listener supported. And we probably don't say that enough. And we were commenting how different that is because every person that's involved in this project was a donor and a volunteer first, and they still are of donors. Now, many of us are staff and full-time, and because of the generosity of people, thousands of people across the country, we're able to put a staff together. I kind of think that pound for pound, we probably get a lot more production out than commercial radio. Yeah, because it's a mission work. It's a labor of love, and people work a lot of hours and put up with a lot of things that they wouldn't put up in the corporate setting. Let's just say it that way. And we're very grateful for the sacrifices of everyone. So thank you. Thank you for supporting us, for praying for us, and thanks for every station that carries us and every platform that permits us, and most of all for you listening and supporting as well. Okay. The Decker interview is world class. I mean, that's a history book page right there. That all you have to do is hear that, and you got the story. It's remarkable. And the question that it does come up to say, well, what's the history of presidential assassination attempts in the U.S.? Jeff, you've got a bit of a list going, right?
Yeah. So I may be wrong on my count, but I counted 10 because there are so many of these presidents who had numerous attempts on their lives, beginning with Andrew Jackson. Okay, so a guy he pulled out a single shot pistol to shoot Andrew Jackson. It misfired. He pulled out a second one. That misfired. So Andrew Jackson just about beat the guy to death with his walking stick. That's Andrew Jackson for you. And then you have everything from William Howard Taft, Herbert Hoover, Franklin Roosevelt, Harry Truman. Harry Truman, now that was actually a fascinating situation, and it was the only time that the Secret Service shot dead the assassin or would-be assassin. There were two guys trying to get into Blair House where Harry Truman was staying as president because the White House was being worked on. And one of them shot Leslie Coffelt, who was a Secret Service officer. And as Coffelt was dying, with his .357 Magnum revolver at a distance of 50 feet, he shot the assassin dead with one shot. It's incredible. He only Secret Service officer to die in the line of duty defending the president. But there have been multiple attempts all the way up to Richard Nixon, Gerald Ford.
Ronald Reagan. Sure.
Ronald Reagan, of course, was actually wounded. Teddy Roosevelt, after he was president, and he was running again in 1912, was shot in the chest. A .32 caliber bullet went into his chest, was lodged in the chest muscle, and Roosevelt just shook it off and went out and did his speech.
That's a famous story. Yeah.
Tough guy, yeah.
How many presidents were shot and killed?
4. Yeah, so Abraham Lincoln, Garfield, and then William McKinley, and then John F. Kennedy.
And Gerald Ford had multiple attempts on his life.
Yeah, he had at least 2 within a 2-week span of time. I remember when that happened. And one was a disciple of Charles Manson, the convicted mass murderer. Her name was Lynette Fromm. Yep. Squeaky Fromm is what they called her. And she pulled out a pistol and shot right at him and fortunately missed. And she was apprehended and put away for life.
So let's ask the question, why do presidents get shot? And let's just say we've gone over multiple instances. There's over, I think, 14 instances. It's much larger than just attempts. Is there a pattern that we can learn? Is it a group, 2 groups? Is it mostly men? Is it mostly women? Is it some group never been associated? Is it always random individuals? Is it loners? Is it all of the above? And I'm kind of guessing that there's a little bit of everything, but do we see any trends?
It's mostly men. There were 2, the 2 assassination attempts on Gerald Ford were by women. Mm-hmm. But it's mostly men, mostly disaffected people who are motivated for political reasons. Of course, I think that they're off their rocker, but they can clearly, in many cases, clearly articulate why they are out to do this. The man who killed Garfield was, I think, certifiably crazy, and he was a religious fanatic. But there are a number of different reasons why people can justify their actions to go out and use violence to promote whatever it is they believe.
And there's numerous people that have been arrested for plots to kill presidents that have never come to fruition, whether they've written it down, made threats, been convicted of having a plan put in place. We've seen that as well. We've seen people that have said that have actually been killed by agents as raids and other things were taking part in their house for what they've said or what they've proposed to do.
Well, in addition, it's to threaten to be a credible threat.
It has to be credible, yes.
A credible threat against the president.
It can't be a joke.
Has been a felony since 1917.
Yeah, it's not like if I just off the top of my head said, "Oh, I wish President so and so was killed." That's not a credible threat. Okay. Now, if I'm online and I'm saying I want so-and-so dead or
when I see you, if you come into my path, I will kill you.
I know that the Secret Service will come and pay you a visit. Mm-hmm. And they will say, you realize that according to federal law, blah, 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 that is against the law. Now, tell me, how serious are you? And they will investigate that. And most of the time, they will walk away saying this is not a credible threat. And nobody gets arrested or anything like that.
So were all of these people crazy? Were they sane? Or is there a controversy about that?
I think most of them, if not all, but most of them had political motivations. Either that or they were just mentally ill.
Yeah,
but even someone with mental illness can have a political motivation.
Like, John Wilkes Booth, who assassinated Lincoln, I don't think he was insane. He was clearly in command of his faculties. He had a very inflated view of himself, and his sympathies were with the Confederacy. And he figured the best way I can get back at the Union is to take out the leader, which that's what he did.
Maybe it's easier. Of course, we're looking more at the modern era right now because we could go back and take a look at Well, I mean, Teddy Roosevelt's famous shot in the chest and carried on to finish his speech. We've got all kinds of different instances here. But Hinckley,
John Hinckley,
John Hinckley, the assassin who attempted to kill Ronald Reagan and then hurt and destroyed the lives of so many in that process. There's one where we had a situation of mental illness pretty well pronounced, but that's the modern era, and that's what we do in the modern era. I'm not sure. And Jeff, you make it John Wilkes Booth is a fascinating case. So it's kind of hard to compare apples and apples on the question of mental sanity, because at what point have you left mental sanity when whatever you're doing empowers you to attempt to go kill a president of the United States? I mean, it's kind of like that's the threshold, right?
Yes. Lee Harvey Oswald, who in most people believe that he really did pull the trigger. Now, was there a second shooter? I'm not going to talk about that. But he pulled the trigger and shot Kennedy twice, and the second shot was the kill shot. He was motivated by political reasons. He was a Marxist. He did not believe in a free government as we have. In fact, he spent time in the Soviet Union, and he married a Soviet citizen. Was he insane? No, I don't think he was insane at all. He had clear political reasons for doing what he was going to do.
He also said he was a patsy, so I don't know. I'm a little more open to the conspiratorial side of that.
Okay,
one,
I've actually been to the 6th floor museum there in the Texas Book Depository, and they give a lot of credibility to a second shooter. But is there concrete evidence? No.
Well, listen, before we even get one more word down that rabbit hole, which is worth a couple of broadcasts, I would be more than happy to go there. But I think that what I'd like to establish, if we're putting stuff up on the blackboard here, is you can't make a case that in every instance, going the whole way back from 1865 forward, that these are people that in their time period, in the context of medicine and mental health, were considered across the board all crazy. In other words, you can do something as crazy as an attempt on the life of a president and not be crazy.
Right.
That's the point. So, of course, as we look at this as Americans, as people who are trained to be problem solvers, we want to figure out, if I can figure out the cause, then I can figure out the solution, and we can stop this. Maybe not quite so easy, right?
I think that's one of the amazing, not to get even more weird, but we don't know a lot about the reasoning of Thomas Crooks, the first person that tried to assassinate Trump and actually nicked him, actually hit him. That it just seems like that kind of isn't talked about anymore. The roof was washed, the body was incinerated, and off we go. And that's just a very strange one.
There's a whole nother radio show, folks. That lack of information is a mystery to me. I cannot understand why people are not. I don't know. I don't get that one. Wayne, I know we got to take a break.
Yeah.
What we've done is we've come so far as to say it happens. We've come so far as to say we still don't have answers. But we've come and gotten one thing off the board, and that is that it's not simply, absolutely, categorically a question of mental illness. It may be a crazy, awful, horrible, sinful thing to do, but it's not necessarily from people who are crazy.
Yeah, that's obvious, I think. Okay, we're going to come back and talk more about this on the Public Square today. Glad you're with us, and I hope that you are telling others of what you enjoy about this program and letting them know how they can find it as well. That's always very helpful to us, so thanks for doing that. We'll be back.
Spreading the light of liberty across the land. Now back to the Public Square.
Back with you on the Public Square today. Yeah, it's a pretty heavy topic, isn't it? And this is kind of the kind of thing we wrestle with here on the public square, and glad to have you along today. Why do presidents get shot? So how do we advance this conversation next, Dave?
Well, if we go back to Sunday school, the answer to almost every question posed is Jesus. And then the second question, if the answer isn't Jesus, it's sin.
Yeah.
And so what we're really going to be looking at now is we can't find a necessary mental deficiency or a pattern in human behavior that is universal across this. Now we've got to take a look at case after case after case after case. In every instance, the action is wrong. Period. End of conversation. Can't find any moral code, any ethical precept, anything that can justify what's done. Now, you could perhaps justify it if, in fact, we were talking about a circumstance in a time of war. For example, if someone attempted to take out Franklin Delano Roosevelt during World War II, if the Germans or the Japanese had attempted to assassinate the leader of the Allied forces, okay, now you would wrap that up in the context of war. People almost go there with John Wilkes Booth in regards to the Civil War. All right, so there's one possible rationale, but that's not in any way, shape, or form the majority of what's happening here. That's not, because there are messages that are left and manifestos and rationales. So now we've got to get to the power of influence. So as we look across what's been going on from 1865 forward, what kind of influences do we see? I mean, war would be one. John Wilkes Booth, obviously, in the Civil War, that would take one of the most notable assassinations off the board. But and in the Reagan case with Hinckley, there you do have a clear categorical case of bizarre mental illness. But what about the others? What about these influences? What about the influences that just happened at the White House Correspondents' Dinner? What do we know there?
Well, having read his manifesto, I would say that he is not insane. He has clear, articulated reasons for what he is doing. He is motivated politically, but I believe that he is making a case morally. I don't think that he has all of his facts straight. But my conclusion is that what he's trying to do is make a case for just war. That as a
prosecuted against the president.
Yeah. So I mean, St. Augustine, who was a Christian theologian back in the 5th century, made the case for just war, that Christians can go to war and kill other people justly if they are being threatened by unjust forces, by invasion or something like that. You can go to war and defend defend the defenseless, defend the helpless, and so forth.
Yeah, so, the manifesto includes multiple scriptural references as well.
Yeah. And so it tells me that he was probably raised in church of some sort and had some kind of moral upbringing. And he's saying, because of these terrible atrocities, you'll have to read the manifesto yourself. Therefore, I am justified to go and assassinate the leadership of this administration.
Rob, you were looking like you were trying to get in there.
Well, the influences come from a lot of different places in our country because you have the freedom to say and do a lot of things without the fear of prosecution from the government. So people can spew any different amount of wild ideas they want to and say what they want without that fear. And I think some people maybe take those literally or become influenced to the point to where they're going to have an action and they may not have the entirety of truth, because there's a lot of people that do a lot of talking, but they don't have truth on their side. Mm-hmm. And some people don't have the mental capacity to discern the difference and just run with it. So I think there's some dark places you can go on the net, and we've seen that from some of the writings of folks that have tried some of these things we've talked about.
I want to go back to the just war theory, or I'm not sure what you would call it, but doesn't it apply more nation to nation? It doesn't give individuals the right to take matters into their own hands. Right.
Well, of course, when St. Augustine was alive, there wasn't a nation state as we know today. You had the Roman Empire.
Right.
And so he was saying that Christians can be a part of the Roman army and take up arms against other force is trying to disrupt the Roman Empire. I mean, that was the immediate context. And but you are correct. Just war does not allow, the theory does not allow for individuals to take matters into their own hands.
Right. That would fall into the biblical doctrine of self-defense.
Yes, if you were being threatened with severe injury or death.
Or if you saw somebody being jumped in a train or something, you're trying to help them. Because that's kind of the rationale he's trying to use.
Yes, to defend the defenseless, to protect the innocent.
Right. But there's a whole other dimension to this, too, with regard to the information that he is basing his perspective on is completely false.
Well, I don't know if it's completely false, but it's completely misunderstood.
I think you're right.
Part of it.
Yeah.
I think it's shaped by the media. There's certainly that aspect.
I think there are falsehoods that are presented by the media.
I think there are some falsehoods, and then there are some things that are probably true, but we don't know the full story yet.
It'd be his interpretation.
Yes, he's got a flawed interpretation of partial facts.
It's like shoot first, ask questions later.
Right.
Exactly.
Well, and it's also, that's a good point. It's also, let's say he was successful in assassinating the president. It doesn't mean that those issues that he's struggling with would magically go away in the world.
Exactly.
There's someone else is going to then be the president of the United States.
That's right.
Are they not going to do drone strikes? Are they not going to have a war in the Middle East? Like every president has had a war in the Middle East.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I think it's important that we be careful here, because I think we're on a very. I agree with everything we're saying. Okay, please don't take this as a reproof, but we're moving very quickly toward the direction. I think that we would find very few people, even reading the Shooter's Manifesto, that would come to the conclusion that therefore he did the right thing.
Right.
Of course not. I especially think the irony, the profound irony, that he chose the event of the White House Correspondents' dinner where 2,500 people were there, and it's pretty hard to find anybody who's anybody in media, in news, in commentary that wasn't in the room. That is an extraordinary, unique gathering. And so given the strategy that it appeared that he had to shoot as many people as he could on his way to getting the ultimate targets of the president and the administration, it looks to me like he was willing to take out a whole lot of people if he could have, to make the point.
And I'm sure this is the last time we'll see the president and the vice president and the cabinet all in the same room at the same time.
Yeah, that's an interesting piece of this. But I think, Wayne, you said something earlier I'd like to really spend some time with, and that's the question of influence, the power of words.
Right.
The power of words, because as we've read through the manifesto, we all, I think, pretty quickly see that doesn't make sense. Yeah, this doesn't make sense. That what's the logic in that? Where did that come from? And trying to identify, as he's laying this set of accusations against the administration, against the president of the United States, how did he come to that conclusion? Where did he get the data? I mean, was he singularly on his own?
Regardless of who the president is, we all have grievances from time to time with that administration, right? But we don't take up arms against them.
Right. Well, what did you all make of that? He began the manifesto saying that I am a part of a representative government, and what my leaders do reflects on me. That's what he said. That's the rationale. So what'd you all make of that?
Yeah, he basically said they've put blood on my hands.
Yeah. Is that right? Is he right in saying that?
No, he's not. I mean, there's no blood on his hands because of decisions made by other people. The correction to wrong decisions being made in government is just at the ballot box, not through a bullet. But I just think it's really interesting that almost every point that he makes in this manifesto as to the why, his perception of the why can be traced easily. You could make a chart and put his statements on one side and what people of influence are saying on the other side.
Well, let's talk about that when we come back in just a moment on the Public Square. We're deep in this, aren't we? But we've got so little time here to really get into such an important issue. We're going to do our best. You stay with us on the Public Square.
We'll be right back for more on The Public Square.
Let's continue our conversation on the public square today. Why do presidents get shot? Dave?
Well, Melanie set up the notion of a spreadsheet, and I think I can see Rob Walgate wryly smiling behind his glasses and holding his face, because Melanie Elsey is famous for spreadsheets. If you want to get someone who will give you A versus B, truth versus fantasy, budget versus non-budget, this is the mastery of Melanie Elsey on a spreadsheet. If Melanie Elsey is spreadsheeting your data, you probably got a real problem.
I just have found over the years with legislators, if they have to read 6 pages of narration, they won't. If they can see it on a chart, they'll look at it.
and see where they're wrong quickly.
Yeah, easier to get to the point.
I want to affirm the power in those spreadsheets.
Amen.
And I also confirm the fact that, Melanie, you're exactly right. If we take each of the claims in this manifesto and we lay them out against truth, the deficiency is profound. The language may be familiar. In some cases, it may even be a clever turn of phrase. There may be an attempt at pseudo-logic in this, but there's no way any person with any substantive amount of common sense and historical underpinning is going to reach any of the similar conclusions. So I'm with you on that. I don't want to jump over that. That being the case, then that leads us to ask the question of untoward influence. In other words, who convinced and how was this person convinced? Did they convince themselves? Or in fact, do we have a culture that is pushing people toward anarchy?
Well, I think in this culture, you have things where you can get in your own little circle in your bubble and you surround yourself with folks that give the message that you want to hear. And you don't maybe hear the other side, or you don't hear. I mean, I think about what we used to do with iVoters, and you've talked about it often on the radio with the non-debate debate, right? You could give your point of view. You couldn't talk about the other side or someone else, but then they were going to be able to come in and give their perspective on something, on an issue. We don't see that a lot anymore from the folks that we're talking about. They're going to come in with a narrow focus and not look outside that. And again, not to get conspiratorial, but I think that's one reason why in this country we do see conspiracy theories run wild and people just go with them.
Melanie, your thoughts? Influencing.
Oh, I think the power of influencing has changed with technology. Before, let's go even before the Civil War. I mean, if there were attempts at assassination, the Civil War point of time forward, and you follow how people communicate as the media, the multimedia, the television as it came into focus, no pun intended. You've got a power of radio, and now you've got social media where it's 24/7. When a piece of information is false, is repeated and repeated and repeated often enough, and you're getting it from 10 different sources saying the same thing, you think it's the truth. But you don't personally go and check it out as to whether it's true or not. So it's a difference between fact and perception. And what's run rampant in our political culture today are perceptions that are not factually based.
Well, I think sometimes even more confusing, there's a partial truth in there that it can sound plausibly true.
Which makes it more dangerous.
Which makes it more dangerous, yes.
So what we're saying is words have power.
They sure do.
Yeah.
They have deadly power.
Jeff, you've got a scripture in front of you.
Yeah, James chapter 3, down in verse 5. Even so the tongue is a little member, and it boasts great things. See how great a forest a little fire kindles, and the tongue is a fire, a world of iniquity. The tongue is so set among our members that it defiles the whole body and sets on fire the course of nature, and it is set on fire by hell. For every kind of beast and bird, of reptile and creature of the sea is tamed and has been tamed by mankind, but no man can tame the tongue. It is an unruly evil full of deadly poison. I can go on from there.
Sure. And the book of Proverbs is filled with conversations about the power of speech and the importance of right words and right settings. And ideas clearly have consequences, and words have consequences. The irony of this event happening at the White House Correspondents' dinner, where the room was filled with 2,500 people, all of whom use words for a living.
And some of whom use the words that he used in his manifesto.
Mm-hmm.
When you have a group of people who are constantly inflaming others by saying, so-and-so is a tyrant, so-and-so is a tyrant, so-and-so is a threat to my livelihood, so-and-so is a threat to my life, my children's life. After a while, some people are going to snap. And by the way, I'm not just talking about people on the left talking about President Trump. I'm talking about people on the right also who were saying that very thing about President Obama. And he had people trying to take his life as well. Abigail Spanberger, the governor of Virginia, I don't care a thing in the world about her politics, nor for the majority of people in the Virginia legislature. But they cannot take away the constitutional rights of my children. They can't. They can make life hard for people, but they're not going to kill my kids. And the correct response to any of these people, and I have political differences with, is to go to the ballot box, not go to my ammo chest.
And Jeff, I would suggest that it's not just physical, literal ammo. It's because that's the last step in the process. It's the verbal ammo that begins.
Exactly.
It's losing the person in the process. It's the pathway to anarchy first requires that we depersonalize the enemies. Mm-hmm. We just depersonalize the people, and that happens on the right. It happens on the left. It happens everywhere. I grew up with it. I've participated in it. God forgive me, save my soul. I've done it in haste. I've done it in anger. I've mostly done it in fear that these people are going to take away something that I love. Sometimes I can do it against corporations. So like when a major cable company decides they're not going to carry CBS in my neighborhood, that means they're going to take away my coverage of the Final Four and the Masters, and all of a sudden I'm enraged. I mean, look, let's be honest. All right. Or your favorite program gets canceled, and all of a sudden that corporation is, straight out of the pits of hell. Wait, whoa, time out, big man. Take a breath. But this is what happens when we're afraid someone's going to take something away from us. It's very petulant when you really think about it. And it's a child that's forgotten who their real father is, who their real provider is. So fear is a big, big part of this. And to me, the original father of FOMO is Satan himself. Garden of Eden, fear of missing out. Did God really say that to you? Wait a second. What if he's not giving you the whole story? And what if, in fact, you could eat the fruit? You're not going to die. He's going to kill you. He's going to come down and zap you with a lightning bolt. He loves you. He's not going to kill you.
Why did they believe that?
No, but you'll kill yourself. Yeah. And they bought the fear of missing out.
Because they didn't trust God's track record. God has a really good track record, don't you think?
Yeah, well, they were given the will, they made the choice. We would all have made it with them, and if we hadn't then, we have since. And so that fear is a fundamental reality to bringing us to the unreality of faithlessness. And people without genuine faith, true faith, redeeming faith, faith that gives them hope, are subject to doing some really crazy stuff. So fear is a big part of this.
All right, let me pause right there for just a moment, as this is my role here, is to keep I'm the timekeeper, I guess, but we got to take a break. We'll come back on the Public Square and wrap this all up. If you have to leave us, go online to listen to the rest of this conversation, an important conversation today on the Public Square. In the time remaining on the public square today with the team, let's continue talking about this matter of presidential assassination attempts. Dave, this has been helpful. There's a lot more that probably should have been said, but we've got a few minutes left to try to wrap this up.
Oh, yes, so much more to say, Wayne. But let's make one final turn on this. It won't be the final time we talk about this, or this is not exclusive.
Okay.
But there's a problem we people have, and I would put myself at the top of the list with this, when the project becomes more important than the people. Now, that's the positive way of saying it. In other words, when I get so goal-absorbed, I get so success-oriented, I get so compelled with getting over the finish line at exactly the moment that anyone who gets in the way is hard for me to see. Okay? I mean, I'm guilty of that. I get it. And I have to be reminded on a regular basis that with Jesus Christ, the person is always more important than the project, because the person is the project. So I asked myself the question, when we look at the life of Jesus, did he ever lose the people inside of the process? First thing that comes up is, well, wait a second. He called the Pharisees and Sadducees non-people oriented names. I mean, he said some really nasty things to those people. He sounded like the prophets. I mean, there was one prophet in the Old Testament who called the leaders of that time sons of witches. All right. And I said witches with a W. Okay. All right. And Jesus called these people horrible. They snakes and vipers, and they were insulting intentional names.
Yeah, whitewashed tombs or whitewashed sepulchers is my favorite one.
Sons of hell is another phrase. It's
Yeah.
not nice, is it?
So now he's the Son of God, and he had the right to call them out.
Yes.
All right. But I don't see him suggesting that we do exactly the same, because he always knew what was in a person.
Yeah,
he
knew their
never
hearts.
missed the target.
We don't.
Never.
We did. Mm-hmm.
He never. But see, if I start trying to emulate that, I better have the same kind of insight he said, which I don't have, which means I better stick with the idea of never return evil for evil, turn the other cheek. And that doesn't mean turn the other cheek and become a doormat. All right. It means don't react to evil with evil. Try to overcome always evil with good. All right. Make no room in your life for revenge, but make room for God to have the space that he wants to take revenge. So we got to take that side of the equation, all right, because we don't have perfect vision as he had.
You know, the one thing I always think about and wrestle with is the biblical consistency of it all. It seems sometimes in the political world that if someone says something, but you're on their political side or you defend that position, you may let that one go more so than if someone you disagreed with their political position says something harsh or critical or going down a path. The words do matter. And I think the consistency and the accountability from a biblical perspective needs to be the same. And it's not always easy, because sometimes that issue you may be in agreement with and you're like, oh, but I like the position they take, but boy, they shouldn't have said that.
Well, losing the person in the midst of the passion, another way of saying that is objectifying the opposition. And so they're no longer people. That's a problem. It's one of the reasons in the political realm that there's a commandment in the New Testament, and the commandment was not uttered by Jesus. It was uttered by the Apostle Paul. He made it perfectly clear in 1 Timothy 2:1. We are to pray. He commanded we are to pray for all in leadership and authority over us. A command without, whether you liked them or not, whether you were slave or master, whether you were one side or the other, pray for those in authority over you, because leadership is a spiritual reality. And if we, the people of God, abandon that spiritual responsibility for pray for those in authority over us, whether we agree or not, we're making a terrible mistake. We're hurting ourselves because we're leaving those people uncovered in the supernatural realm. We need to cover those people in prayer and pray for God to intervene on their behalf. That's one thing we as people of God can do, and we must do. It's a commandment.
How often do you hear that in church on Sunday morning?
Yeah, I was afraid somebody would bring that up.
Me? Almost never.
I'm fortunate, Jeff, because we have found a congregation where the pastor, that's in his soul. He can't not do it every Sunday. And every Sunday when we walk out, I say, thank you, Pastor.
Amen.
And he was doing it long before he met me.
My church does it as well, some.
Your church does too, Alan?
Yeah, they do, yes.
Praise God.
Well, and I've got to commend the Catholic liturgy because I'm not commending the doctrine, but in the liturgy of prayer in the Catholic Church, they write in the liturgy to pray for those in authority over them. They do it every Sunday.
Yes, they do.
Okay. So let's get to the conclusion. I'd like to talk about losing the person in the process. And I'd like to once again turn to Jesus as the model. All right. So ask yourself this question. The worst sin of betrayal in the history of the human race against a leadership figure. Alan, you called Judas' betrayal of Jesus an assassination.
It essentially was. It was a political and a religious hit job.
It was a setup, wasn't it?
Yeah.
He was an accomplice.
Resulting in the death of Jesus the Christ. So now we also know that there was a plan and that the Lord was in control of that plan.
Yes.
But Judas acted as a free moral agent, and so was Judas one of the people that Jesus called a whitewashed tomb? Was Judas one of the people he called, all those names and vipers?
No.
Matthew chapter 26, verse 50. But Jesus said to him, "Friend, why have you come?" Friend.
Jesus never lost sight of the person, even the one who was there to hand him over to death. I think when we study the entire passion of Christ, we find that over and over and over again. Look at how Jesus spoke to Pilate. And even at the very end, when John appears at the cross, after everyone had fled and left him, and John returns to the cross, does Jesus scold him and say, "Where were you?" No. Jesus is focused on the person of his mother. Jesus never lost sight of the person. Would to God I could learn from that.
Dave, I think that's a good perspective when we're thinking about policies and communicating with people who are elected officials, because we tend to have higher regard for elected officials who are on the same page as we are from a political perspective. But we have to be able to have conversations with those who agree with us and with those who do not agree with us, because we need to understand one another's perspectives if we're going to get a policy in place. You want to create a policy that won't have unintended consequences. And in order to do that, you have to understand both sides of the issue.
Well, I'll tell you, the reality is we all need to pray. We need to pray for God to have mercy upon our country. We need to pray for spiritual deliverance from evil. And then I need to pray in repentance and ask God to help me to see people the way He wants me to see people, not the way someone buzzing in my ear tells me to look at them, or not the way my fears say, look at that. How do we look at people the way Jesus says? Wayne, the reason that we've belabored this point at this level is because in the manifesto of the individual that took the shots at the White House Correspondents' dinner, he attempted to make a Christian apologetic rationale for what he did. For him, it was religious. And I don't care whether somebody was shooting at candidate A or candidate B, party A or party B, you're not going to find that justification in the life of Christ.
That's a great wrap-up lesson for us today on this important conversation. Thank you, team. Thank you very much, Dave. We'll be back next week with The Public Square. In the meantime, please, if you missed any part of this, go online to listen, thepublicsquare.com, YouTube, Spotify, any of those podcast platforms. Look for The Public Square.
The Public Square is a broadcast service of the American Policy Roundtable.